and check live on the cell phone if we are for real.
Gonna be 100% sure. Now look at this compared to the other computer. When we started streaming, we've only added 1 millisecond to the average frame rate. Fantastic.
But there is still a lot to drop because of the network.
No, so, the computer's not a mythical being. So it only works with.
Watch live, it says Roberto and Barton.
Okay.
All right.
I find that pretty satisfying.
We even give a notification to people that is subscribed to our channel. If you, now we're talking security and hacker and attacking system. If you don't like our channel and you don't subscribe to our channel, hacker are gonna attack your refrigerator and lock it. No more food. Somebody's already telling us hello. Hello to you too.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being in the chat. Nevin. I think somebody that knows us. All right. So the topic of today is security, IT security. And IT security is a very broad topic, but we're going to make the difference of how you secure a centralized system, let's say a server where you keep data that has to be protected, people need to access and read only some data, they cannot break in the system to read all data that belong to other user, and decentralized system where there is, as we learn, no computer that dictate the rules and no computer that is more important, but in a decentralized system, data is pretty much open to everybody. How you protect the system from being attacked and manipulated, and which techniques are there to do these attacks, right?
Part of the reason that we want to do this topic is because there's a big difference in what people typically mean when they use the word security in talking about a centralized server, and what they mean when they talk about a decentralized network. But so I think to kick off that discussion, we can start by formally defining what is security. What does it mean for something to be secure?
Well, you can have a computer connected to the internet via Wi-Fi. If you lock it inside a safe that is with 20 keys, etc., people can still go into the internet and attack your system. So security is not only how hard it is to access physically the computer, but how hard it is to access the computer also via its communication channels, right?
So modern security researchers have decided at some point that it is meaningless to just say that something is secure in an unqualified sense. The way that we talk about security now is that something is secure under a given threat model. And a threat model is just a set of assumptions about what an attacker can or cannot do. For example, if you have your private key in your cell phone on your Bitcoin wallet, that might be considered secure under the threat model that an attacker can send any kind of, like whatever kind of way they can try to access your phone over the internet. But that might not be secure under the threat model that somebody puts a gun to your head and takes your phone. And so to say something is secure, first we need to qualify the threat model that we're talking about. Usually it's not secure under every single possible imaginable circumstance, but we pick a set of circumstances that we think are secure enough for the scenario.
The meme in the world of security is to accuse somebody of security by obfuscation, security by ignorance, security by not revealing the unsecure aspect, right? And that's anyway something that extends in a little bigger term, because we trust, there are a lot of dependency. So when you create a system, let's say a banking system, you really need to run this on an operating system. And you cannot certify the security of the operating system in an absolute terms. You can say 10 years it exists and nobody ever broke it that we know about, because the best attack is the invisible attack.
There's
You enter, take data, modify data without being noticed, get out, and nobody knows. So in the term of dependency, the security is never being guaranteed, because as soon as somebody discovered that, for example, Linux distro using a certain Ubuntu per se has a security flaw, automatically everybody and all the applications running on top of the Linux distro automatically are not secure. Doesn't matter how secure is the application, or to a certain extent they're secure but not in full, right?
In fact, a set of these ways to violate the security of especially low-level things like operating systems or hardware devices. There are hundreds or thousands of them undiscovered on your computer right now. And these are called 0 days.
Well, 0 days when somebody discovers it, don't say anything to anybody.
When
but
somebody discovers it, and then at the time that the world becomes aware of it, we label it a 0 day. But actually, the vulnerability existed before then.
There are
noticed
vulnerability recently discovered at operating system level that were there since 1980, and they were dragged on. I remember it was 1 or 2 years ago that they discovered that the Linux operating system running on the iPhone, because iPhone run on top of a particular distro Linux, and also the Apple computer, if you send a particular character, it will crash the operating system. So somebody will start sending from the Android, we were immune to this, SMS formatted in a particular way to Apple phone. As soon as the Apple phone visualized the SMS, bang.
This is the byte order mark thing.
Something that was calling an address of memory outside the space that was possibly delimited that generated the crash. So
huge topic area. So maybe to kick off this comparison between centralized and decentralized security, there's an analogy that I like to use about centralized security, which is, so this is the kind of security where I'm a company or a person that operates a web server, right? And the web server is kind of like, making it secure is like securing my castle in the clouds, if you want. We're in the cloud. But so, in this case, so I think of all of these defenses as walls that protect the sensitive stuff on the inside. So I have a database with credit card numbers and user-sensitive information. Maybe I have, whatever other sensitive information about myself. Around this, I build a software system, and I configure my operating system to try to stop people getting in from the outside. And maybe beyond this is not strong enough for me, because maybe even if I stop people from getting in, people can still DDoS the server. They can bombard it from thousands of computers around the internet. Now I add an extra layer to my castle wall, which is something like Cloudflare DDoS protection or something like
those
this.
are two different kind of things. One is to disable my service online, but it doesn't access the user information.
Correct, yeah.
So they are just impeding my server to serve the
So
users
these are
and the
different
service.
castle walls that protect the keep in different ways.
Absolutely. And there are different approach to what and how is protected. So in the first comparison between centralized and decentralized system, I think an important observation will be this. In a centralized system, users are authenticated with the username and a password. And a piece of software, coded hopefully properly, decide based on the username and password provided by the user, what the user can see and can do in the system. Okay? This paradigm cannot be applied to the centralized system because there is nowhere a list of username and password to be matched exists, right? So the user authentication in a decentralized system has to happen at user level, not at server level. So I no more send the username and password to a server, because in the case of the centralized system I should send it to all the nodes so they will immediately know which is my username and password and be able to work on my behalf. But I need to do something at the user level that I only can perform and other people cannot perform, authenticating that it is me. Doesn't matter where I am in the network, it is me because nobody else can do this. And mathematics, cryptography particularly, with the digital signature, which is not the signature that you make in the small display at the restaurant. That's not digital signature. Digital signature is a mathematical operation done with a secret number that is like your password, which is called private key, that belongs to you. With the mathematical operation, you produce what is your user ID, which is called public key, so people can recognize that is you without knowing your secret password, which is the private key. And in front of anything that you want to tell the decentralized system, you do a mathematical operation producing a signature on your message. So the message accompanied by your identity, which is the public key, and the signature that you can only produce with your secret private key, with the secret password, can be distributed around a decentralized system And every part of the centralized system knows that this request to do changes, to do whatever, is made by you and not by somebody else impersonating you or pretending or somebody that is not authorized. In these terms, the difference between centralized system, where my username and password are sent to a server, that the server decides what I can do, and a decentralized system where I create a mathematical operation that I can only do and attach this to my request to the centralized system, that's one of the first key points in how security is handled between a centralized and decentralized
In fact,
system.
let's generalize this a little bit, because this you're talking about how the two different systems handle the authentication and authorization problem, right? And so the first big difference that we have to think about in these two paradigms is that in the centralized server, where I build a castle and I keep the stuff in the inner keep in the database very safe, I can have secret information from the rest of the world, which I can rightly expect, if my security is good, that nobody else in the world can get. In a decentralized system, like a blockchain, this is not true. The information that's inside the database of the computer is one that's going to be synchronized across any number of nodes on the network. Any person who runs the software can have full access to all the contents of this database. So the security in the decentralized system is not concerned with making the information inside private. It's solely concerned with the other aspect, which is controlling which actions each person is allowed to take.
Well, in a way it can be true. Actually, it is true in the basis that you only say what action can be taken. But if I want to keep some private information in the centralized network, I can. And I can do it by encrypting the information that I want to leave in the decentralized network, which means I use, one more time, mathematics at the client side, at the user level, to take the information and transform it, thanks to mathematical operation, in gibberish that can be retransformed in something that makes sense only owning a specific password, a specific decryption key. Then I can deposit the gibberish into the centralized system, so everybody is free to see my gibberish. But only the one person that I want to make sense of the gibberish and is the person to which I'm gonna send this key to retransform the gibberish in something that makes sense. Now, in this way, it can be one or more people, not only one. So let's say I make a web page in a decentralized system that I only want 5 people to see, or at least if they share with others, then is out of my control, but initially 5 people to see. I will make this web page become gibberish, put it in the decentralized system, and then give to these 5 people the key to decrypt the information and visualize this page in their own browser, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So this puts us in quite a different situation. And I would say another one of the interesting...
I'm sorry. Just to finish my analogy, in the centralized system, the page is clear inside the server, but I can say only the user that log in with this username and password, so these 5 users, are allowed to see. So that my software take the page that anybody that can break into the computer can see and show it only to these 5 users. So if somebody else log in with a different username, my software says, sorry, you cannot see this page. Classic WordPress page with password, only if you know the password, the page goes to you. Doesn't mean that the page is not visible to somebody that can break in the system. It's only the software that decides to let you see it or not. While in the case of the decentralized system, if you don't have the key to decrypt, is mathematics. It doesn't matter who decided you can see it. If you cannot do the mathematics, you don't see it. Sorry, Barton, for this interruption. I wanted to finish
No, I think
the
it's...
analogy.
And in fact, sometime we really deserve to go in depth on encryption. I'm reading a fantastic book on encryption right now. It's a fascinating
How it's written.
You have to decrypt every paragraph. It's slow reading, but it's so worth it. So this is definitely one aspect, is that if we can keep secret information in the public domain, and only the people with the keys can decrypt it. This gets into... I was going to go in a different direction first, but since we're on encryption, we can go ahead and talk about this aspect. not only in a decentralized system can you encrypt data to keep it safe. Also, if I had a big centralized server like a file hosting provider, and I want what I upload to be safe from the provider, I could encrypt that privately first and upload it. But there's a difference, which is that this is not true of all decentralized systems necessarily, although anything that replicates a lot of pieces around is. If my encrypted file is stored in one place in the centralized server, say it's like a big multi-gigabytes file and nobody else has downloaded it except for me. If, for some reason, my encryption key were to leak to many other people, I can quickly go and delete that file from the server. And in this way, I have some protection that even people who have the key are not able to go back afterwards. If this big file were stored somewhere, say in a blockchain or in a decentralized file hosting setting, or something that distributes it around many, many people, the chances that I could ever guarantee that every copy of that giant piece of data were deleted is very low. And by the mathematical nature of encryption, it's impossible to change the key after the thing is encrypted.
Yeah, which is a very important thing, because once an encryption get broken for any reason, because quantum computer, because of something else, there is no way to stop people from decrypting it. Yeah, that's right. It's also true that the basic rules that whenever something goes in the internet, you cannot stop from existing anymore. I will keep it valid for whatever thing, hardly you can remove something from the internet.
I found the formal way to recognize this because I was reading the NIST guidelines, the National Institute of Science and Technology in the United States, the NIST guidelines on encryption that is the guidance that the United States government and intelligence agencies is being used as the basis for their encryption or it's the basis for their security practices. And one of the things that they talk about, so there's this piece of advice that we give clients a lot. We have a lot of clients who come to us and say, I want to put private data on the blockchain. I want to encrypt my user data on the blockchain, and the users will pass the keys around themselves. And usually our answer to that is qualified. We say, yes, you can, but be careful that if one of the keys leaks or whatever, on the blockchain there's no going back. You can never remove the unencrypted file if one of these keys leaked. And so be careful of that and what kind of information you're going to store here. It turns out this piece of advice that we've been giving by the NIST is actually formalized by saying, they say that everything that you encrypt, or the lifetime which any key is meaningful or whatever, should be restricted by a well-defined crypto period, which is what they call basically any time you have anything that's encrypted or it has a key associated with it or whatever, you should imagine it first and state formally the time frame that you expect that this key needs to be secure in order for your system and your other assumptions to be secure and to be true. And so effectively, when we take an encrypted file and we replicate it across the entire network, we're saying that that piece of data has an unlimited crypto period. The crypto period is indefinite, which means at any time in the future that the key becomes compromised, that data now becomes compromised. So I thought that was an interesting way to formally state what the difficulty is with that particular approach.
I always wonder if there is going to be some, in the next future, some sort of biogenetic memory storage that have in effect the possibility to change independently the encryption mechanics as time goes. They say that DNA can store a huge amount of data. Just a small drop of blood by itself has terabytes of data. And this is static. That's the data. It's going to always be the data. They actually last longer because they can analyze the DNA of the corpse they find in the mountain that has been lost thousands of years ago. I doubted that the CD-ROM is going to keep data living for so long anyway.
Because living cells are a replicated system. If you could put the DNA in a cell and cause the cell to replicate, you've created 10 million copies in a petri dish of your data.
Make me think about viruses. Corona. But will be possible to, in fact, one day in the future have an encryption mechanics that is not just mathematics, because mathematics is static. 1 plus 1 is always going to be 2.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what people like, in whatever language you translate it. It
Yeah.
can be translated in whatever language, but 1 plus 1 is 2, period.
Yeah.
And mathematics was 1 plus 1 was 2 10,000 years ago, and it's going to be the same in the future. But if it's combined with some metamorphosis, something that change with time.
Yeah. Some kind of rolling encryption.
So would I being able to say also, okay, you can decrypt this data in this time frame, because I possess the full string for 100 years of decryption, and based on when
But
you
need
are
the exact slice
in the correct moment in time. This would be a fantastic evolution, because it would allow also to postpone access to data. The deadman switch, for example, or whatever other things I can say, data is safe until this date and is disclosed to.
It would be a fantastic breakthrough. So we try to analyze.
Why? The key of this is also for me the basics of the key of securing the centralized system. This seems a strange analogy, but listen to this. Something that works safely uses only internal data to secure itself. Encryption uses its own data to be encrypted. Okay? Username and password to access data that are anyway clear if you enter from the back door is not secure as to me, because you use an external factor, which is the software between the user and the data.
This castle wall where the people inside are unarmored, if you want.
Exactly. So once you can break the wall, you access the things, right? And when it comes to the centralized system, one important aspect is that all the different nodes can take the same decision altogether, right? And the way they take this decision should be based only on data that they already have, and not data coming from outside. Because data that come from outside can be manipulated, it's not guaranteed to be always secure, etc., etc. And for this, we had a long discussion in the past about proof of work, which use external data, which is hashing power generated by hardware, compared to proof of stake, which is use internal data. In a good or a bad way, that's another thing. But so that's the two separations. So I like and love things that use their own information to secure themselves, because it's intrinsic that the security must work, because must come from the item itself, right? Centralized system can do that. In fact, I hope that all the lessons learned through the centralization and to the centralized system
should be applied
slowly gonna get applied also to centralized system.
For example, there have been so many hacks in recent years where a big centralized system has lost control of its database. Somebody manages to get inside, manages to download the entire thing, has all the sensitive data, all of these insecured people who are in the keep of the castle that was breached, if you want. And if those services had been very careful about applying a layer of, say, encryption, say, individually to each record that they kept, and they were much more sensitive about who had the private keys to decrypt these records and how the system works, then there's a good chance that even having stolen the data, that stuff is still armored. It's not clear that it would at least be extra obstacles for them to try to figure out how to turn it into something sensible. And so absolutely, I think one of the biggest lessons that we're learning here is it's not enough for the wall on the outside to be secure and everything inside to be insecure. You have to make the data that's stored itself insecure. Hopefully insecure even from the people who administrate the service, who may be malicious, or they may down the road become replaced with someone malicious.
I work in the past with a sort of PI specialized in IT systems in the States. And all the company, they called us because they were hijacked. All their IT infrastructure was hijacked. 99.9% was from
the inside.
Their own ex-employee, somebody got fired, got upset. And in fact, it's a very important mechanic. So the beauty of the centralized system is also that they hardly can change. They are preset in a certain way, they start rolling, and they require a lot of effort to make small changes in how they work, right? While the centralized system can change any day, in any moment, So it is important if you want to pay attention who has the hands with access to changes in a centralized system, and probably the ideal centralized application, because there are tons of reasons why centralized is better than decentralized in many cases.
Much more agile.
But should be implemented in such a way that even the guy that is there making sure the server doesn't get fired and works alright has no way to
breach that user info.
And I have a very nice example, and which is the basic of the idea of blockchain, right? Servers have logs. Servers tend to audit anything that happens inside them from outside or from within, like a terminal from the administrator, in a log file. And when there is a breach to the server, the first thing the security researchers do is go to this log file and check what happened, who did it, from where, etc., etc. In fact, the first thing that a hacker, and I don't like to use the term hacker, but let's say a cyber criminal that breaks in a system goes to do is to find access to the log server in order to edit them and delete his own tracks of
the breach.
The breach. Now, even Edward Snowden, that for some is a hero, for other is a villain, doesn't matter. When he went into the CIA server to take all the data, because he was a high-level administrator, he managed also to go to the log file and delete all the tracks of what he copied. In fact, the biggest drama for them was not only that they break in from the inside, which is relatively alarming in terms of security, but they had no idea what he copied out of those servers because he deleted all the logs. Why I'm telling all this to you? Because if the log server are chained as a blockchain, all the file one to the other, it's harder for me to go back and modify a past without a small application to send a warning, which can be something, even hardware embedded in the special hard drive to keep logs, for example, right? In this way, the log system is not in the hands of whoever breaks in, which is the most insane thing. It's like the alarm of your house that has just a button that says turn it off, and is right after the door. The thieves break the door, the alarm is almost goes on, and you press the button, turn it off.
It's like if you had a video camera pointing into your house and the video reel that it's recording on is right inside.
Exactly, so you break in and steal their drive with the video, which actually happens very often when they go rob some small convenience store. The first thing that after they rob, one guy goes to the cashier or then thinks the other goes to the back, take the...
So, yeah, in fact, this was one of the very, first kind of things that you could use a blockchain for without even the whole decentralized network. Going back to our analogy, so I want to change gears a little bit and talk about the second part. I started describing a castle with kind of two walls that Roberto rightly categorized. So first, around the sensitive data is a wall whose job is to stop you from getting inside and getting this data. But outside that, we have a wall that stops you from being DDoSed, that has to be able to absorb the amount of traffic that networkers throw. And for this analogy, we can imagine that, maybe the enemy has no interest in getting into and figuring out what's inside the keep of the castle. They just set up all of their trebuchets on the hill and try to knock the whole thing down by force, right? And so there's several approaches that you can run your thing on a big enough computer. You can protect your server behind specialized services like Cloudflare, for example, that specialize in the ability to absorb any amount of traffic that somebody can launch at the server. But this is something that is also trickier in the decentralized network case. Say, a decentralized network, the security model is not really that any one computer on the network can withstand a DDoS attack. The security is that even if you DDoS 5 or 10 or 20 of the computers on this network, that would not disrupt the total operation of the network. So the way we think about this problem is quite different.
Well, I think that in the term of security, the centralized system is more complex to secure, but is absolutely more secure in a certain sense, right? Just by the fact that it's open, it changed the paradigm of security, right? So is distributed in terms of work and presence along many nodes. So if you want to create a damage, you have a lot of people to attack, not one single party. There is no inside job possible because simply you need to collect the inside job of each party.
Owned by a lot of different people, which, if you remember before, was a property that we called political decentralization. So not only it runs on different physical machines, but those physical machines are owned by a lot of people who
which
are
may think differently about something, exactly. Right. So that's a very important and particular aspect on the decentralized system. Yet, a centralized system can end up to be safer under certain other aspects compared to a decentralized system.
Sure.
Give us an example, Bart.
Sure, certainly. So, very easily it's the case. Now, let's say I have my my central bank website, right? Which people use to transfer money. And outside that, I have on this side, I guess, I have some big blockchain that people use to transfer their money, right? And my blockchain, so my central server is secure under the premise that the people who administrate the server are actually treated correctly. They don't try to cheat anyone, they don't change the balances, they don't blah, blah, blah. Which maybe my organization has very good culture. I have a lot of inspectors general in place to notice anything strange that happens. I do psychology tests on every person who gets hired, and I'm very, very secure.
So you're saying that you rely on people.
Correct. On the other hand, once I have this blockchain running out in the world, and say the blockchain is susceptible to a 51% attack, so maybe somebody could go and erase transactions if they were to have the majority of the hashing power, the majority of the nodes in the registry, the majority of the stake, whatever the actual dynamic is. At this point, I kind of trust that this whole public network, which I've relinquished control over, is going to have enough good actors on it who don't conspire with each other to keep the thing safe. Whereas, theoretically, and this is the if that you have to trust me on, the people who administrate my bank server, my centralized thing, which is on this side, I guess, are actually trustworthy. And if they're not replaced by a new owner who comes in and wants to dismantle everything.
So basically, both systems rely on trust on people at the end of the day.
Correct.
Even though, think this, the trust in the decentralized system is more the trust on the code. And the capacity to prove that the code is right. On the protocol, okay? On the protocol. Let's say a protocol that is coded, is architected properly, can guarantee that the participants need to respect it as they're automatically kicked out. Doesn't matter what software talks to the protocol. If the protocol is not respected, they are out. So if the protocol is architected properly, there is a certain guarantee. Now, let's say that a machine doesn't require too much human support. Let's say a system hardly is composed by a single computer, even centralized system, like a bank doesn't have one computer. It has a data center with hundreds of computers, which all together work in a certain way. It's important for redundancy, it's important to spread the calculation of things in different parts, it's proper to make two different systems make the same calculation and compare that they make the same result. They do all those things which are very, very important, right? At the same time, the centralized system has many nodes around, which also they need to arrive at the same conclusion, right? The difference is that the one in the bank are probably managed by the same team of people because they all work in the same data center. The one that are decentralized are managed by many different people that they don't know each other possibly.
So, formally stated, a bank software has no political decentralization. So the people who operate the bank are all employed by one bank, that they take orders from one group of people.
So they can be asked.
The computers are owned by the same person.
Now, in the terms of a decentralized system, if I can make some magic drones that have a Raspberry Pi inside that runs a node and they fly high to keep the sun cell loaded and make a network of thousands of those independent totally. Once I free the drone, He's flying on his own, he's recharging on his own, he's connecting between all the other units in a mesh network by his own, and they are ownerless. So, in a Strange Dreams, for example...
This was the Pirate Bay plan, right? Is that they're going to put the servers in the air balloons over international waters?
Exactly. Well, Google itself has a huge platform in the ocean where servers run. They actually have a very beautiful patent, that is a little bit OT, where the wave of the water make this unit do this work, and there are dynamos in the middle for which they produce exactly to run. And they're kept cool by the cold temperature of the water, the server. So it's pretty interesting things. In fact, being super rich, Uber's model to buy one of those abandoned oil platform that have an helicopter pad and enough space to make a small village and run huge data centers there, given the possibility to generate enough electricity. Because being international water, you can host whatever can be regulated in other places, like gambling site, content that is, forbidden in certain country and other things. Back from from the OT. Having a network or computer that are self-maintained, let's say they don't really depend on a particular person because they self-update, in a decentralized network will still be something that you can rely on, even if there is no owner.
To a certain extent. But I think you hit on a very important point, which is one I was forced to confront this morning. And inside Blockchain Zoo, I was doing a security meeting with a lot of our developers where we're talking about especially how we want to protect users against phishing attacks and what kind of internal security culture we want to have at Blockchain Zoo to make sure that people aren't vulnerable to requests that come from the outside. And phishing attacks and social engineering really forces a computer person like myself to come to terms with a hard truth, which is that at the end of the day, the things that are important to humans are human things, So no matter how secure a system is in the sense that it proves that a value in a database can't be changed, at the end of the day, it comes down to a human being to honor your money. Really, to decide that it's worth something, to decide that they want to do business with you. It comes down to a human being to decide that it's worth to keep this passphrase secret or to not trick another person. So where I'm going with this is that, because you mentioned really in both cases, whether it's the centralized or the decentralized, you come down to trusting people, right? And I think that part is unavoidable. It's a little bit uncomfortable for us in the sense that we like to think in terms of things that can be fully automated and can be protected by the perfect set of rules. But I think probably it's going to be an intrinsic property that you have to trust some of the people operating the systems in order to do. So the power in this sense of, say, the blockchain is that it takes, instead of one organization of people who are all tightly connected and very close to each other, and it's easy for them to collude with each other, and they keep looser rules about who can edit what on the inside of their group. That's harder for you to put your trust in than a network of thousands of people who don't know each other, who just run a piece of software.
You did watch too little movie. Think about this. If the node of the centralized system acts as a virus, and while being a node as well, scan the network around him, find vulnerable servers, inject itself into them, install there, and become an additional node and start doing the same thing. So, in this case, I think it was very funny. They saw a TV show about people successful startup project or something like this. Somebody that created this 3D printer that essentially can print itself. And literally had first the garage, then the garage was ending up and rented and other things, where every time you print a printer, assemble the printer and start making more printers. It's like a rabbit.
Geometrically begins consuming every resource on Earth.
And then you can sell them. So, but the idea to have something that self-replicate and self-sustain. And the idea that the blockchain is the perfect marriage with the Internet of Things. Actually, I like it to call it blockchain of things, right? Where every device is actually an account and potentially a node of a blockchain. It then can create a real universe of things that work together where humans are not welcome at all. And self-regulate, self-sustain. Think about this thing, like, and this is a case that I got very close of. I have years ago I had a client, just to make it clear, live in Bali in Indonesia, where a lot of surfers come to surf. And in an island nearby Bali, Nusa Lembongan it's called, this client had a nice hotel up a hill and did something that I thought it was quite silly at the time. Installed the camera, he spent quite good money for a very good quality camera that was zooming in and rotating and zooming in to all the surf spots where surfer would go surf. Now surfer pay quite good money to have access to this webcam in order to go and check the status of the wave before even leaving from home and going to the place. So they actually paid a monthly subscription to go in the morning, log in and watch the beach. Now, think about this camera to be installed there. People pay crypto to go watch the wave. The camera pays his electricity bill in crypto by itself. And if he has an hardware problem that is revealed, he can call support and pay the support and the maintenance with his own crypto. This camera can become an independent business on its own that offers a service to the public, make his own money, and use the money that he makes to support itself.
Can pay his own taxes.
Can pay his own taxes, can have his own tax number, and be a totally independent and part of society. So the road can get fixed because this camera generated revenue.
Now we get into a philosophical point.
But it's not. It's technically possible. It's actually.
Oh yeah, it's technically possible. The philosophical point is not whether it's possible. The philosophical point is, up until today, computers have largely remained a tool that humans use to do human things. At which point do we cross that boundary into where computers are doing their own thing that maybe some humans created them to do a long time ago, and human life is subjugated to what the computers allow and desire?
Other thing, what if this camera at a certain point start pointing to naked women because they see can make more money? And the woman they're gonna sue the camera, and the camera goes to court and pays the lawyer with his own revenue. That's an interesting point, because I do believe that not long from now we will be able to have several devices that generate the revenue for us too. Start with the self-driving car. I got home, I'm gonna watch my TV show, whatever, I don't care. Leaving the car parked all night in my garage is a waste of money. The car is self-driving, can become an Uber. Go around town, stop, collect people, bring them around. In the morning, when it's time for me to go office, I already have earned some money making the car work during the night. I'm a car pimp. No, it's not pimp my ride, change completely the meaning of that.
At a certain point, to follow your camera analogy, your car might decide that it has better market value on its own. It doesn't need you taking a cut of the action.
So this is gonna be the bridge between the moment that hardware has a consciousness and an opinion that is not derived only by mathematics.
The scariest thing about the thing that you've just described, and why I just say it's a philosophical point, is because for everything that you just said to be true, the machine doesn't need consciousness. It can just be a dumb machine like it already is and follow a system of rules, a bunch of if-else statements that tell it how to maximize its profit and how much taxes it has to pay.
This boils down to machine learning. Because
not even it has to be a fully conscious being for it to satisfy these descriptions of what a person is.
If there is a machine learning, mostly if there is a network of self-driving cars. So we can say, hey, on the road with the prostitutes, there is more business of people that want to be in a car for 10 minutes.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then they start all going there. So yeah, I think that the machine learning network between nodes that are self-regulating and self-maintaining can really be a step ahead to a world where technology lives its own life, and we do interact with them, not by being their masters, but being their clients more than...
Well, and so, yeah, I guess my only feeling on this is it's certainly a step in a direction, but it's one where we should step cautiously, because sometimes human beings play with fire in the sense that we get so excited by the possibility of something that we haven't thought carefully through every implication that it has on our future lives.
Shut down our blockchain project and go to be farmers.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think what I'm saying is philosophically different, because I consider what I'm saying to be self-consistent with how I see a blockchain, which is as a set of computers run by people, where the human beings that run the computers are the accountable parties for the behavior of the system, and that the blockchain collectively is a tool that people use to interact with other people.
I actually dream the opposite. My dream is really that the node becomes such a simple, yet complex, but in terms of execution simple item that can start fitting everywhere. So devices will be not only users but also contribute to the network somehow, right? And then we're gonna start seeing that a very well designed protocol that adapt to whatever needs, so it's very elastic.
We're not far from the level of computer intelligence that could begin improving the protocol automatically through a series of artificial deploying updates across the network.
I do believe the machine learning is the next good step, right? So whenever you have, just to explain a little bit the machine learning to the public that don't know, given there must be 3 people watching us, except our 2 of us plus 1. The machine learning is whenever you have something that produces data in a constant way, you can start creating and looking a pattern in this data and be able to predict a situation based on the pattern of out of an analysis. Let's say situation, data, situation, data, situation, data. And then between all the situations, you notice the similar pattern are created by particular situations. So are categorized. Situation A as this kind of pattern, situation B as this kind of pattern. When you put in front of a new situation that you don't know what it is, you look at the pattern and you can categorize the situation as A, B, or C. That's the very simple terms of what machine learning means. It's not a complicated kind of coding. So it can be embedded in whatever whatever device create data can have, additionally to the software that is already running, a small software that create what they are called as models of this pattern, and then share with others if they trust what has been learned. Maybe there are two cameras at the market pointed on fruit things. And they see that based on the season, based on if it's been raining or not, the fruit change, the color, the shape, etc., etc. And at a certain point in front of the picture of a certain kind of set of fruit, they can say it's been raining or not because of the things. Each of the camera has its own model that is being built for what this camera see, and it's gonna say this kind of scenes belong to being raining. The other camera has a similar but not identical model. When these two models are put together, become stronger because have a much better
more data, more experience.
So in a term of network where each model can become a blockchain object the other can use, you know who created it, it can give a disallow each item to work little to have a huge amount of models that comes to them. So usually the problem of machine learning is they require a lot of powerful computer to do analysis. Because machine learning classic is I take 10,000 pictures of cats. I send them all to the same algorithm telling them those are cats. Then I show one more picture and there are 3 dogs and the machine says these are not cats. Per se, okay? To do this learning is a lot of work because I need to find the 10,000 pictures of cats, have the right to use them, and then start telling that those are cats, But if this learning is done by many parties, when you have the reCAPTCHA that tells you click the square where there is a car, Click the square where there is a fire hydrant. You are helping machine learning because they trust humans and they give exactly the same set to 5 different people. So if somebody is pressing random, is being discarded, you are helping machine learning because they teach machine learning. Look at this photo. Cards are here and here. Look at this other photo, cards are here and here. So that in the third scenario, the machine learning says, here and there are cards because he learned the pattern, right? They remove the cost of hiring 10,000 people to spot the cards in the picture before feeding them by using the reCAPTCHA and make it as a security system to access a website.
So they get double the meaning, the value off of the effort.
Absolutely. Same like when you have to type the strange word, those are OCR from Google Books.
Yeah.
For example, you are helping to do OCR quality and so on and so forth. But if many IoT devices, each of them has sensor to understand the system of a scenario and has the data to combine with those things, what can do is part without having the human to say where is the car, to do a certain part of and if the result of these things determine the behavior of the IoT device.
However, there's still a place where the human being needs to be involved in this system, in the original step, which is, so what separates a machine learning and artificial intelligence from what we would call a properly conscious being? I would say it's this. A conscious being looks at the world around it, which is just some random assortment of molecules and physics and places and things like this. First, the conscious being decides what is a good outcome and then uses its neural network brain to optimize its behavior for how to attain that outcome. The machine learning that we use in computers is very, very good once some conscious being has given it a desirable outcome to optimize for that outcome. But it has no capacity itself in the way that we've chosen to look at the world a priori with no previous assumptions and decide.
But you can have a different sensor. For example, you have a camera that sees a scenario. You have a sensor for temperature and a sensor for humidity.
Sure.
And then you look at these two sensors and the picture.
Sure.
And make a scenario. This sensor and the picture. In front of a
you
picture,
you can associate the two. Absolutely.
In front of a picture, you can say, I suppose it's going to be this temperature and it's going to suppose this humidity given the clouds or whatever, right?
And some other system can optimize on that in order to decide where the traffic goes or when the crops.
The next camera doesn't need the two sensors because
somebody at the top of the chain has to tell it more crops being grown is good. The computer doesn't have this automatically.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Well, yeah, until they already know because they learned it with the pattern of the past work. I think that any task where humans are involved and are coupled with machine learning, at a certain point the human becomes less and less and less needed.
To me, is the other way. I still see, no matter how complex this chain becomes and how many layers of automation take out human effort, the fact that you have a human being who desires something and applies a tool in order to accomplish that task never changes.
Let's say that, you know those round broom that goes around by the house?
The Roomba, yeah. Correct.
What's it called?
The Roomba.
Roomba, okay. Even go back to the station to recharge itself, right?
Yeah, very automated.
Alright, let's say...
But the machine doesn't care whether the floor is clean. A human put that on there to clean their floor.
Yeah, well, if there is a sensor that checks the quality of the cleanness of the floor, the machine sort of care and keep doing work until it's clean, right? But how we learn if it's clean or not is by being told at the beginning until he learn on his own, right?
Sure, yeah.
So there are, for example, something that is fascinating, and we're toward the end of this thing.
We got far off the topic, but it's Friday, so we're in session.
Fuck it. The point is, there are tractors that go on the countryside to make all the work, and there is nobody driving them. At the beginning, they were shipped exactly like the others, where potentially you can put a human just in case. Now they're even shipping without the seat and the things. There are things to cut the grass that goes around to cut the grass and go back things. And probably at the beginning, they were not doing the perfect job. And they being adjusted and adjusted and adjusted. And I do believe the machine learning is the tool. For example, the Tesla car, before they're going to be fully able to drive by themselves, they need tons of hours of training, and
Mhm.
which is given by people like me that own a Tesla,
Mhm.
driving around and combining the scenario of what the camera see with my behavior as a driver, good
In
or bad
fact,
that I am, to teach the
correct.
car what is the case.
Else, how does the Tesla know that not hitting an obstacle is preferable to hitting an obstacle?
Unless somebody, show that is
So
preferable.
it's valuable to a human being not to hit an obstacle because the car is expensive, because they need to get to work, because they don't want to kill someone.
Oh my God. What this has to do with the centralized or decentralized IT security? Maybe security can be managed by machine learning.
We have 5 minutes. Let's bring it back, right? So all of this was a tangent on a particular point about whether the security comes from the computers or the security comes from the people. Say, in this, I guess, we could try to formalize, back when we did the video on Vitalik talking about centralization, there's the first one, I forget exactly what he called it. I'm going to call it mechanical decentralization. The fact that you have some kind of security just running, even if I'm the one who controls 10 computers, and I use the same software redundantly on 10 computers. I have some security that a mechanical failure on one of the computers isn't going to take down my system. The second kind was political decentralization, which is that not just I run 10 computers, but 10 people each run a different computer, and each of these people are motivated by the laws that they follow and the money they stand to make and their personal system of morals and whatever things that are not the same between all of them, and it's more difficult for them to collude with each other to change the state of the system. And so personally, I think this political decentralization, the difference between just the number of computers you run it on and the number of people with differing motivations who run the system, I think is really central to what makes blockchain security different from centralized security, personally. That's my opinion.
People has the leash of IT system. People should get out of this thing. People should be removed from the paradigm and leave IT devices be on their own free. IT device life matters.
Mm-hmm. Brought to you by the Matrix.
Already then, guys, from far away where we are, is the end of this Friday nice chat. I'm very happy about this chat. I think the broadcast went well. We spoke about very interesting things. And Monday, 3 p.m. Singapore time, and with the time zone you are, follow us for a more serious and composed talk about blockchain.